Come in, my people. Take a seat right over there on the couch and join me. Pour yourself a fine, hot, or cold beverage. Welcome. Doug in Exile. Today we're checking out the Supreme Court. Ketanji Brown Jackson arguing with D. John Sauer, S-A-U-E-R, the Solicitor General that's defending Trump's case to be able to reject the idea of anchor babies or birthright citizenship. It's finally going before the Supreme Court. This obviously could change everything about the United States. Like, it could change our population, the numbers of our population, by about 20 to 30 million citizens overnight, going one way or the other. Kind of important. Now, here's Ketanji Brown Jackson saying that she actually intends to go over the president's head with these judicial, it's about judges overturning the president's authority. Welcome to Doug in Exile. Subscribe, let's watch.
I would think we'd want the system to move as quickly as possible to reach the merits of the issue and maybe have this court decide whether or not the government is entitled to do this under the law. Wouldn't having universal injunctions actually facilitate that? It seems to me that when the government is completely enjoined from doing the thing it wants to do, it moves quickly to appeal that, to get it to the Supreme Court. And that's actually what we would want.
So she wants a lower court injunction, a lower judge. She believes that the founders, that's how the founders saw it, that they thought that they wanted a lower judge to perform an injunction on our entire country's president. And I don't just mean one judge, but like 300 judges launching 300 different lawsuits arguing over illegal alien citizenships, challenging the president. You can see how this would not work and be a huge judicial tyranny of lower judges overstepping the boundaries of the executive office and basically having more power than the president of the United States.
So similar to what Justice Kagan points out, is that if the government is saying no lower court can completely enjoin it, it actually means that the government just keeps on doing the purportedly unlawful thing, and it delays the ability for this court to reach the underlying issue.
Here is the closing remark from John Sauer. We're going to get into a whole lot more of this argument, guys. I like going deep in the weeds when it comes to the Supreme Court because so much stuff happens here. Obviously, on deciding anchor baby or birthright citizenship is going to be so huge, because also if these illegal babies have a right to be here and be citizens, then Trump can't do these mass deportations. If their wife is pregnant, if these illegals' wives are pregnant. That's what I mean by it has far-reaching implications. So here's his conclusion, that D. Sauer guy, the guy who represents the U.S. Solicitor General, largely defending Trump. The original meaning of the Citizenship Clause extended citizenship to the children of former slaves, not to people who are unlawfully or temporarily present in the United States.
Thank you, Mr. Chief Justice. The original meaning of the Citizenship Clause extended citizenship to the children of former slaves, not to people who are unlawfully or temporarily present in the United States. The merits arguments we are presenting to the lower courts are compelling. We cite, for example, a host of 19th century authorities that point out that domicile was the touchstone of non-citizens being treated as, having their offspring treated as citizens in that context. That is consistent with Wong Kim Ark, as well as with the slaughterhouse cases in Elk against Wilkins, and the suggestion that our position on the merits is weak is profoundly mistaken. And that kind of snap judgment on the merits that was presented in the lower courts is exactly the problem with the issue of racing to issue these nationwide injunctions. The Chief Justice correctly pointed out that this court, if it wishes to address the merits expeditiously, has many tools to do so. Cert before judgment is one possible tool. There are also others. But this court should also address the scope of remedy, the remedial question that's presented in the application. That is an extremely urgent question. And one of the reasons it's an extremely urgent question is the limiting principles that my friends on the other side have been offering have all proven to be completely ineffective to slowing the essentially flood or cascade of universal injunctions that we see in these cases. The states here have a unique issue that hasn't come up yet, but for the reasons we state in our application, they lack third-party standing very clearly under cases like Murky and Hayland and Katzenbach and Kowalski. So no injunctive relief should run to the states in this particular case anyway. And most fundamentally, the vision of the district courts that's reflected in the issuance of these nationwide injunctions is a vision of them as a roving commission to correct every legal wrong that they can consider and to exercise general legal oversight over the executive branch, which is what this court rejected in TransUnion. And for those reasons, we ask the court to grant the applications.
Okay, and here from the Heritage Foundation, the history of the 14th Amendment is clear. It was never meant to confer birthright citizenship to everyone born in the United States, especially those whose parents entered the country illegally. This is Hans von Spakovsky.
The 14th Amendment, you look at its passage, it was very clear that it did not confer birthright citizenship. In fact, most of the legal scholars today, liberal ones who say it does, obviously have never looked at the original history of its passage, and they ignore the second half of the citizenship provision. What it says is you're a citizen if you're born or naturalized in the U.S. and you are subject to its jurisdiction. And that second phrase is crucial. Lynn Trumbull, he was one of the senators who was a key sponsor and writer of this amendment, said that means that you owe your political allegiance to the United States, not any foreign power. And an individual who is born in the United States, whose parents are citizens of a foreign country, whether they're here legally or illegally, owes his or her political allegiance to that foreign country. They are not citizens of the U.S.
And so a baby, just by definition, would be too young to swear to the United States, right? Their citizenship. Therefore, they would not fall under its jurisdiction. They would probably fall under their parents' care. And if their parents are illegals, then their parents are members, have jurisdiction to another country. So it would defy that ruling. I had never heard that argument before. Now it makes perfect sense. You can rewind it if you need to play it again, but we documented it here on the channel for you because I'm being educated even as you're being educated. I'm learning right along with you guys. This is a lot of fun, right? Here is Amy Coney Barrett. This is by Cash Lauren, is saying that she is bad, is proving once again she may be the worst SCOTUS pick ever by a Republican. I disagree with that, just so you guys know. She has a lifetime appointment to the Supreme Court because of Donald Trump, yet you can hear her disdain for the Trump administration in her argument.
Did I understand you correctly to tell Justice Kagan that the government wanted to reserve its right to maybe not follow a Second Circuit precedent, say, in New York, because you might disagree with the opinion?
Our general practice is to respect those precedents, but there are circumstances when it is not a categorical practice. It is, and that is not
this administration's practice or the longstanding practice of the federal government. And I'm not talking about in the Fourth Circuit. Are you going to respect a Second Circuit? I'm talking about within the Second Circuit. And can you say, is that this administration's practice or a longstanding one?
As I understand it, longstanding policy of the Department of Justice.
Yes,
that
so you can just hear Amy Coney Barrett's kind of attitude that she has against the Trump, the argument. She's showing a little too much flack. The right's uncomfortable with it. I'm still pretty comfortable with it. How about you? Here's Keegan from Town Hall. This is where she appears to support the Trump case earlier, but now is against it. The irony. In 2022, Elena Keegan, a liberal Supreme Court justice, says it can't be right that one district judge can stop a nationwide policy in its tracks.
It just can't be right that one district judge can stop a nationwide policy in its tracks and leave it stopped for the years that it takes to go through a normal process.
Okay, thank you. You're making Trump's case on that one, and then we'll do the final closing argument here by Sauer with partners. So far, the Supreme Court arguments about anchor babies is focusing mostly on the Trump administration's request to end universal injunctions by low-level courts. Justice Thomas injects a helpful reality check. We survived until the 1960s without universal injunctions. I love hearing it in his own voice. Watch this.
General, when were the first universal injunctions used?
We believe that the best reading of that is what you said in Trump against Hawaii, which is that Wirtz in 1963 was really the first universal injunction. There's a dispute about Perkins against Lukens Oil going back to 1940. And of course, we point to the court's opinion that reversed that universal injunction issued by the DC Circuit and said it's profoundly wrong. Now, if you look at the cases that the either party cite, you see a common theme. The cases that we cite, like National Treasury's Employment Union, and all of those are cases where the court court considered and addressed the sort of universal, in that case, statewide issue of provision of injunctive relief. So when the court has considered and addressed this, it has consistently said you have to limit the remedy to the plaintiffs who are appearing in court and complaining of that remedy.
So we survived until the 1960s without universal injunctions.
That's exactly correct. And in fact, those are very limited, very rare, even in the 1960s. It really exploded in 2007 in our cert petition in Summers against Earth Island Institute. We pointed out that the Ninth Circuit had started doing this in a whole bunch of cases involving environmental claims.
There you go. It was the environmentalist movement in 2007 that really started the idea of these judicial injunctions that where lower courts could affect the presidency. Invented in the 60s, it appears. The first one in the 1960s, where nothing good was invented in the 1960s, and then completely unleashed on Trump. Judges should not be able to go over the president. That includes if it's a Republican judge and it's a Democrat president, you should not be able to clog him up with a bunch of lower court petty judges launching an injunction, overthrowing the will of the people that elected their president. I'm Doug in Exile.